Welcome to the Bigger Cash Flow podcast, where we interview business owners and real estate investors that share tips and tricks on how to grow your cash flow and reach financial freedom.
Hello, everyone. This is Bo Kim with Bigger Cash Flow. Welcome to episode 3, The Importance of Mindset in Creating Bigger Cash Flow. The past 2 episodes, you heard us interview each other and got to know a little more about who we are, the path that we took, and why we decided to create this podcast and share our thoughts and experiences with you, our listeners. As I said during my interview, I think that 80% of any success is driven by your mindset and the belief that you can achieve the goals that you set forth to accomplish. So I kind of wanted to share this quick quote of the day with our audience, and it's by Napoleon Hill, the author of Think and Grow Rich. It says, "Do not wait. The time will never be just right. Start where you stand and work whatever tools you may have at your command, and better tools will be found as you go along." What are your thoughts on this quote, Joe?
Yeah, and I think it's a great quote and a great book by Napoleon Hill.
Yeah.
And I think this quote can be summed up in just 3 words. You know, I think Nike says it the best when Nike says, "Just do it," right?
Yeah.
Walk the talk.
Yeah.
Take action now.
Yeah.
Right? Pull the trigger. So I think taking action and not just sitting on your butt is really important on making things happen.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think the more that I get active on, some of these real estate groups or masterminds and these meetups, the more I get to network with other investors, entrepreneurs, and business owners. And there's so many times where they reach out to me and ask me, how did I get started? How do you do this? Right. And I feel like a couple months later, if I just go back to them and be like, hey, so just wanted to catch up. How are you doing? And they're still kind of stuck in that analysis paralysis and still trying to figure out if they should take the plunge or not. So I totally agree with you. You just have to do it. Once you've made the decision that this is right for you and you've done your due diligence, you got to just take action.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's much easier said than done because, though I'm on my 6th Airbnb, it actually took me 2 years before I had the idea, before somebody told me about it, for me to then take action. So I know that it's not something that's just, anyone can do easily. I think it does take a lot of effort and, conscious decision making to actually take that first step. So, I mean, I don't want to make it, I don't want to make too light of it, that it's just like, just do it and it's going to all get done.
Right.
Definitely takes a lot of, planning and also just taking those little steps, whether it's going to the conferences. I went to 2 different conferences before I actually got the courage to get it done, and then took an online course. So I know that these little steps that you take are gonna, help you take that one giant leap and pull the trigger on your first property.
The reason why I was able to kind of dive in a little bit quicker maybe than others is I did have a mentor. So, having a mentor, I think really kind of collapses the gap. Let's just say the average person takes like 6 months to kind of buy their first rental property or whatnot. Maybe if you have a mentor, that will be, 2 months or even shorter. So, that's another tip that I would, share with our listeners is that, have great mentors or coaches or even peers that you just mastermind with, because that's going to close the gap much, much quicker.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so as I was kind of preparing, the notes for this show, I was doing a little bit of research and I found this website called skillsyouneed.com. And it had a really good, thought idea in terms of fixed or growth mindset. So it talks about how there are 2 ways to view intelligence or ability, right? So when they say ability is fixed or ingrained within us, we're born with a certain level of ability and we cannot change it. It's called a fixed mindset, right? So when we think we can develop our ability through hard work and effort, this is called a growth mindset. So there's a little bit of difference between fixed mindset, which is kind of set, we think, we believe in those abilities, and a growth mindset, which we're able to continue to grow and increase through our hard work and effort. So these two beliefs are very interesting to kind of research and look into, because these beliefs will lead people into different types of behavior. You might not be good at math, but if you think, hey, if I give a little bit of effort, if I do maybe 10 problems a night, get a little bit of guidance and help, then I can increase my math grade. So that would be the growth mindset. Um, so it was a kind of an interesting perspective, because I think we see it all the time, where, if you are starting a business or you're reading a book and you're super motivated, but those with a fixed mindset might just be like, those are just people who have parents who've taught them how to be an entrepreneur, or those are for people with parents who have a lot of money that they can invest in their kids' business, or maybe they know somebody, or for whatever reason, or they're just super talented, right? Or on the flip side, there are those hustlers with a growth mindset, thinking that they can, with hard work and effort and persistence, they're able to achieve those goals. So kind of wanted to share that with the audience and kind of also get your thoughts on this, Joe.
Yeah, no, I definitely love that idea about fixed versus growth mindset. And the words that come to my mind about growth mindset is grit, and
Yeah.
perseverance and tenacity.
Yeah.
Those are the things that are qualities that people with growth mindset have. And this idea that your destiny is not bound by your talents or limited by your talents alone, but bound by your ability to fight through those difficult challenges. So,
Right.
and it also reminds me of this one of my favorite parables. There were three different servants that were given three different amounts of money
Mm-hmm.
or talents. One talent was a large sum of money. So the story goes that one servant was given one talent, a second servant was given two talents, and the last third one was given five talents. And when the master returned, he called the individual servant, and the first servant came with the five talents, and he traded and worked hard to create five more talents. So he had 10 talents total.
Yep.
And then the second servant came back with who was given two talents, and he created four talents total. He doubled what he was given. Now, the last servant, who only received one talent, dug a big hole in the ground and buried that one talent. So the response from the last servant, who dug the ground and left it in the ground, said to his master, "Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid. I went and hid your talent in the ground." And then the master answered him, "You wicked and lazy servant, you knew that I reap where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest."
Mm-hmm.
So this story is really great because I think it talks about a couple different things. One is, not to be afraid. I think that was one of the biggest barriers, the limiting factors for that servant, was that he was afraid and he didn't want to take any risks. And that was a barrier that prevented him from being successful.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that was interesting was the master actually, was teaching this servant, and saying, "Hey, I can grow things where there is no growth. I can create things when it's a challenging environment. I can, grow a business." And so what's funny about that is that a lot of us, I think, learn a lot of things but don't take action. So there's a lot of knowledge out there that's open to everyone to learn. But
Yep.
if you don't listen to that education and follow along, what you've been given, then you're not going to succeed. So I really love that parable because I think it matches this whole growth mindset.
Yep.
and not being bound by your fears, taking the steps, taking the risks, but at the same time, learning from masters and learning from people who've done it before you and following in their footsteps.
Right. And, as I was just listening to you share this parable, I mean, the word that came to mind was being a good steward, right?
Mhm.
So many of us in this day and age are blessed, to have, smartphones. We have, different resources like the internet at our fingertips. And even you and I, right?
Yeah,
You're up in the Bay and I'm down here in Orange County, and we're able to connect and just mastermind, do this podcast together even though we're 100 miles away.
yeah,
So, I mean, just there, to be honest, I feel like there's no excuses, right? If you want to learn something, you can go to YouTube. If you want to, learn more about a certain topic, you can pick up a book and read. Or even, like I mentioned before, find a mentor or a coach, pay for one if you have to master that skill, right? So,
yeah,
there's really not a lot of excuses these days, and it's just not the lack of resources, but it's the lack of resourcefulness. And I think that's one of the key things that I myself have learned to be better at is, where do I see my current environment? What
mhm,
are what my weak spots,
yeah,
and see how I can cover those, right? So
yeah,
if I'm doing a real estate deal right now, I'm getting a ton of deals, I'm making great connections. I'm kind of in the middle of all this, but maybe I'm lacking a little bit of financing. So that's my weak spot. Then I got to go, find the financing because I have a solid deal, things
yeah,
like that. So I think you just have to really work hard, be persistent, and
mhm,
be very resourceful.
yeah.
And I really like this example, Joe.
Yeah, no, and I think you're talking about believing in yourself, right?
Yeah,
And not letting that self-doubt
right.
prevent you from taking those steps. I think that's really important to kind of hold on to that firm belief that
Mm-hmm.
you can control your destiny and that
Yeah,
you can, create your own path. But you're going to hit some barriers. You're going to hit a lot of, missteps, and you're going to fall through potholes, you know, and but at the same time, I think that persistence and getting back up when you get knocked down is such an important part of this mindset that we've all experienced. And I personally have experienced it, going back to that Airbnb. I had to go to two different conferences and finally then take an online course before I actually took final action.
mm-hmm.
And it was just really eating at me by the time I went to that second conference. But I think sometimes the key is not to quit. And
Right.
one of the things that I always kind of talk about is it's better to be late to the party than never make it to the party at all,
Mm-hmm.
right? So a lot of people think, oh, it's too late for me. I'm too old. I haven't done it enough, or all these people have years of experience before me. Well, it doesn't matter. Just start and get
Right.
started, and you'll get there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And you just mentioned believing in yourself. And I think that's another great topic that we should discuss, which is, we talked about hard work and how having a growth mindset instead of fixed mindset, the ability to think that, hey, with hard work, persistence, and effort, I can overcome any innate abilities that I'm born with, right? Any limitations that are currently surrounding my life. So I think another key piece of that, hard work is important, but, like you mentioned, believing in yourself that I can do this and I can achieve these goals are equally, if not more important than the hard work that you're putting into, right? So one of the examples that Skills You Need talks about is actually when you're raising children. I don't have any kids, but Joe, maybe you can relate to this, is that you shouldn't praise kids by talking about their ability, but instead talk about the effort that they're putting in and how much they've learned from their experience and how they're developing. So instead of saying, hey, you're really good at math, you're saying, hey, great job, you tried really hard and look what you've accomplished. So it's kind of putting a more bigger focus on the level of effort. Have you had any experience maybe raising your kids and kind of seeing the difference that that perspective makes?
Yeah, I think that's something that's been studied actually.
Mm-hmm.
There was actually a Stanford study by Dweck and Mueller Their title of their study was Intelligence Praise Can Undermine Motivation and Performance.
Mm-hmm.
And the gist of that is that people who've been praised for their innate intelligence, they get complacent, they get
Mm-hmm.
lazy.
Yeah.
And when they face a challenging problem, they kind of give up way too easily because they
Right.
just assume, well, I'm smart, so I should be able to do this really fast and quickly. And if they can't do it, then they just give up. Whereas if the students who were praised for their effort and their hard work, they face a challenging problem, and when they can't get it, they don't quit. They'll
Mm-hmm.
go and work on it again another day, and
Yep.
then they'll go and find somebody to get some help.
Yep.
So I think what was interesting though about the study was that at the end of the study, they tested these kids, and the kids who initially did much worse on the IQ test and standardized tests, when they were praised for their effort and hard work, they actually outperform the so-called smart kids at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day. So that actually also kind of goes back to that whole growth mindset, is that these talents and skills are not innate, that you can actually grow them, and you can continue to grow and improve yourself, and nothing is fixed. Your destiny is in your hands.
Yep.
So I really love that study. And I definitely, when I see my kids, I try to, one of the things I do tell my kids is, hey, the grades are not that important. What's important is the process.
Mm-hmm.
Are you enjoying learning, right? What are you learning? Are you interested in what you are learning? So that's what I'm trying to kind of, and then I also try to emphasize, are you looking for that one thing that you're passionate about, that you love? Because at the end of the day, finding your career and finding what you love to do is way more important than getting an A on a math test. And the earlier you kind of know yourself, I think that the better you will have a chance at being excellent at what you're going to end up doing as an adult.
So I kind of wanted to also talk about, we talked about growth and fixed mindset, and then we talked about how not only putting in the work is important, but, believing in yourself. But as you and I both know, every day is not rainbows and butterflies, right? There's ups and downs, there's ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
Whether you're an entrepreneur or you're working at your W-2 job, it's not always going to be in the up and up. So I think an important topic that we should talk about is handling setbacks.
Yeah.
So these aren't necessarily a sign to say stop, right? Stop and, give up or go back. It's like the word says, it's a setback, right? You might have to pause. It's not a period. So, each mindset has their own way of dealing with delays or setbacks. And a person with a fixed mindset might go through the same struggle, look at the same, setback, and they might really hurt from it because it questions their ability. It's like, hey, am I not good enough? Like, hey, I thought I was really capable of doing this task or opening up that business and having massive success. But once you hit a roadblock, you start questioning yourself and you're like, do I need to give up? Do I need to find another job? And it's not totally uncommon for that to happen for those with a fixed mindset. Whereas on the flip side, like you mentioned, with those with a growth mindset, if they hit a roadblock, they're going to, maybe take a step back and say, okay, this is the problem. What are the resources that I have to create a better tool for myself to break through or go to the next step, or just evaluate themselves and see, hey, is this not the path? Do I need to go this way? Or just kind of really reevaluate the situation so that they can proceed to level 2, level 3, level 4. So
again, I think the real key is you're going to get there. You just have to keep grinding. You got to keep taking that one step, go to the second property, the third property, the fourth, and then, pivoting and moving on to different things that is going to help you grow, in your portfolio and in your business, in your investments. So I think that's something that I think about personally for myself. Even in my career choice, I remember taking a summer course in college because I really found this one love of computer science, of programming. The first programming class I took in college, I loved it. But what happened was I took the intro computer science class. And what happened was we did a lot of group projects. And then the people in my group were fantastic. I had a kid, student who was a high school student, not even a college student, but he was like a genius, computer
Yeah.
science genius. And then I had somebody who was a old person, she was like 30, I think. But, when you're in college, when you're 18 years old, somebody who's 30 years old seems very old to you. And she was already experienced in the industry and she was in my group. So these two superstars were killing it in this
Yeah.
class. And I thought to myself, wow, I really suck at this.
Yeah.
And that fixed mindset that I had prevented me from pursuing a career in computer science. And honestly, I think it was one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made, because I would have graduated in 1995 in computer science.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when every single amazing internet, Google, Amazon, every single one of them started right around that time. And so, I look back at that experience and thinking to myself that, if I didn't quit, if I had some, grit to kind of overcome this barrier, it would have really changed my life. So yeah, I think these are these opportunities where if you might have just thrown away real estate thinking, hey, that first deal was terrible. Maybe you had an eviction. Maybe you had a long vacancy and you were thinking about just quitting this whole thing because it's not working out for you. I think those are opportunities for you to kind of step back and say, hey, you know what? I can get over this. And, you just have to hold on and continue to pivot, continue to work at it to overcome, because you see so many examples of people who have succeeded. And we didn't all, we're not, our last names are not Trump for sure. Right.
Yeah.
So we didn't get a huge inheritance of $1 billion, real estate empire given to us. Certainly, I think it's very important for everyone to know that, hey, it starts with one property.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Having those building blocks and just starting is so important. And not even, getting as far as buying your first one. I think people, pick up a book or listen to an audiobook or podcast and they're like, okay, real estate investing is fascinating. Or, they might do, options trading or whatever that might be, the way that you create cash flow. And they might, stop at the first roadblock and say, oh, I don't have any money, or I don't know anybody. I don't have any mentors. Bo, you said go find a mentor. How do I go find a mentor? I always ask myself, hey, why am I doing this, right? Whether it be in my W-2 job or whether it be for my real estate side business, I ask myself, hey, Bo, why are you doing this? Why are you buying this property? Or why are you working for this firm, right? So I work for a CPA firm and, there's many projects and things like that. And I ask myself, hey, why am I doing what I'm doing? It keeps you stay motivated. It kind of helps you stay accountable, and it reminds you why you're doing the things that you're doing. So that's the way that I'm personally driven. And I think it's a great way to kind of push through some of those roadblocks.
One of the things that helps me to kind of keep going,
Mm-hmm.
looking for ways to be thankful.
Mm-hmm.
With my job, my day job, there are bad days. Certainly there were bad days this week when at the middle of the night, I got called in to do this extra thing beyond my regular work hours. And I have to think about, why am I doing this? What do I enjoy about this job? So I think that that's helpful for me to kind of keep my eyes set on the goal,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's my W-2 job, because I personally don't have plans to quit anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely would like to go part-time eventually. But at the same time, I want to continue working in my field. So I think that's something that's really helpful to kind of keep you motivated, is to be thankful and be positive about the progress you're making, and then appreciate some of the small things. Smell the roses as you move along. Don't
Yeah.
just grind away and just remember all the wins, the small wins as you go through each day. Yeah.
Okay. No, I like that story. Smell the roses. Okay, I got to
Yeah.
remember that. So
Yeah.
another question that I ask myself is, what steps are you willing to take, to be accountable, reach your goal? And another question is, are you willing to take risks? There's so many, people that I talk to that are afraid, they're stuck in analysis paralysis. But my perspective is that we are oftentimes afraid of what we don't know. A lot of people might be like, hey, out of state investing is so dangerous, don't ever touch it. Or real estate in general, people who have lived through the crash. A lot of people are scared of the stock market. A lot of people are scared of real estate. A lot of people are just scared.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that you educate yourself enough to make that decision and get enough perspectives to, understand the risks involved, but also figure out a way to mitigate the risk.
Yeah.
Figure out what's your risk tolerance, how much risk you're comfortable with. And, you can't eliminate risk. Take steps to make sure that those risks are minimized to the utmost possible way.
Yeah, no, I think risk is such an important part of investing and real estate, because you definitely want to take account of the risk, but if the risks prevent you from taking the first steps,
Hmm.
then then you're putting too much weight on the risk itself. And I think with real estate, what's really amazing is there's so many exit strategies. There's so many ways you can control your investment. Whether it is, let's say you have a vacancy longer than a month, a month and a half, 2 months go by, and you still don't have a tenant. Well, you can lower the rent. Lowering the rent, even though your cash flow might be diminished, that is one of the ways you can minimize your risk, because that's better than continuing vacancy. If you have a bad eviction, what do you do next? Well, you're going to pivot and you're going to try to improve your tenant selection so that you don't run into that, or you lower the chance of having a bad eviction. So I think those are like, the fears that a lot of new investors have about investing in real estate, but there are so many ways you can tweak and control your investment such that you can minimize or decrease those risks.
Yep, I agree. And one of the last questions that I always ask myself is, are you willing to be coachable? What I personally did is, try not to create the wheel, recreate the wheel when I was starting out in real estate. The audience, you guys are going to know that Joe and I talk about real estate a lot because, that's one of our main passions. And although we have our W-2 jobs, real estate is our current side hustle. And for me, when I was first starting out, I didn't want to recreate the wheel. I latched myself onto different partners and, mentors and also other peers who are starting out on this journey, to just mastermind with them, pick their brain, and, figure out what kind of works for my situation, right? Becoming coachable, changing your ways, listening to other people, all of these are great questions to ask yourself, and that will help kind of customize your own mindset and your philosophy. Because I think our philosophies, Joe's philosophy or Bo's philosophy, is kind of what directs our actions and our behaviors and all of the steps that we take day to day, right? Whether Joe's, hustling 16 hours on Airbnb, or me, I'm working at, my firm, and then, on the nights and the weekends, I'm working on my real estate. I'm doing this podcast. It's all because, of my philosophy, of my mindset, and what I believe in, that's driving my actions. So I think asking yourself these questions and kind of setting your mindset straight is really going to set you up for success in the long run.
You know, luck comes to those who are in the right place to be lucky, right? You have to place yourself in positions to receive that luck.
Yep.
And so I think networking and meeting the right people and treating people right too, so that you can be available to receive that new tool, new person, new opportunities, is a huge part of winning in this game of real estate and investing.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
Well, I think that wraps up our show for this week. So next week for our listeners, we're going to be talking about our favorite topic, real estate, the different types of real estate, why real estate, what are some of the benefits. So stay tuned for next week's episode. If you thought that this episode was helpful, please do us a favor and leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you may be listening. We appreciate your support and see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Bigger Cash Flow podcast. Please remember that opinions of the guests are their own, and nothing on this show should be considered personal or professional advice. Please consult your tax, legal, or financial advisor for personal advice that fit your unique situation. See you next time.